Have you ever felt empty? Even when everything in your life seems fine, you're surrounded by people chasing goals, staying busy, scrolling endlessly. And yet, there's this quiet heaviness inside you, a silence that follows you when the noise fades, a question that whispers at night, why do I feel so disconnected from myself? If that sounds familiar, then this video isn't just another message. It's a mirror, a journey into truth behind that emptiness. Because the reason you feel lost isn't random, and the answers you're looking for, they're not out there, they're within you. Stay with this video until the end, not for me, but for the part of you that's been waiting to be heard. You confuse stimulation for fulfillment. In the modern world, we are surrounded by constant stimulation. Our senses are bombarded from the moment we wake up, scrolling through our phones, watching flashing images, listening to music, jumping from task to task. Each moment is filled, every silence quickly covered by noise, every pause replaced with a scroll, a click, a like. Yet, despite being constantly stimulated, many people feel deeply empty. They find themselves unable to explain the restlessness inside, the unease that follows them, even in moments of apparent peace. This is because stimulation and fulfillment are not the same. Stimulation is a reaction to something external. Fulfillment is the result of something deeply internal. The confusion between these two leads to suffering that is often misunderstood and misdiagnosed. Stimulation gives you a quick hit. It triggers dopamine. It sparks excitement. It entertains. But like a spark, it burns fast and disappears. The moment the stimulation ends, you are left with yourself again, unchanged, untouched, and still searching. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is quiet. It is not loud or attention grabbing. It is not dramatic or fleeting. It is deep and stable. Fulfillment feels like warmth that arises without needing anything from outside. It feels like being whole without needing to prove anything or chase anything. But because it doesn't shout for your attention, it is often overlooked in favor of the louder, faster pleasures of stimulation. We are taught to chase pleasure. We are taught that happiness comes from acquiring more entertainment, more achievement, more likes, more noise. So we consume experiences, people, content, places. But consumption without presence leads to numbness. The more we consume without awareness, the less we actually feel. Stimulation dulls our sensitivity over time. What used to make us happy becomes routine, then boring, then empty. We seek stronger stimulation, louder music, faster content, more intense experiences. But no matter how strong the stimulation, it cannot replace what it never was: fulfillment. Fulfillment does not arise from what you take in. It arises from how you meet the moment. A meal can be stimulation or fulfillment depending on how present you are while eating. A walk can be either, depending on whether you're observing your surroundings or just rushing to the next destination. Talking to someone can either leave you feeling deeply nourished or completely drained, based not just on them, but on how present and open you are within the interaction. Fulfillment is not about what you do, but about how you do it. It's about the state you carry into every activity, not the activity itself. Many people live in a cycle of craving, satisfaction, and emptiness. They crave something, a new series, a new partner, a new purchase. they acquire it. Satisfaction arrives, but only briefly. Then the emptiness returns. So they look again, believing the next thing will be the one that finally fills them. But the problem is not that they haven't found the right stimulation. The problem is they are chasing stimulation to fill a void that cannot be filled that way. It is like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. The more you drink, the more dehydrated you become. The more stimulation you chase, the more disconnected you feel. It is not that the world is lacking in what it can offer. It is that you are not aware of what you truly need. Fulfillment requires slowness. It requires stillness. It requires being able to sit with yourself without distraction, without running away. Most people fear silence because it reveals the noise inside. They fill their time not because they are full of purpose, but because they are afraid of what will surface when there is nothing left to distract them. In this way, stimulation becomes a form of escape, and anything used to escape will ultimately become a prison. You can become addicted to stimulation, not just in the form of obvious pleasures like social media or entertainment, but also in more subtle ways, overworking, overplanning, overthinking. These are also forms of stimulation. They keep the mind busy. They prevent the deeper questions from arising. Why do I feel so restless? Why do I feel so empty even when I have everything I thought I wanted? When we mistake stimulation for fulfillment, we end up exhausting ourselves. We push harder, run faster, accumulate more, but fulfillment doesn't require effort in that way. It requires awareness. It requires returning to simplicity, being present with your breath, your body, your thoughts, noticing what is real instead of what is loud. When you begin to slow down, you will start to see clearly. Stimulation fades quickly, but presence sustains. You live in reaction, not reflection. Most people go through their lives reacting. They react to messages, they react to moods. They react to opinions, to traffic, to bad news, to expectations. Each day becomes a sequence of responses to external triggers, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. In this reactive state, there is little space between the event and the response. Something happens, and we immediately respond emotionally, mentally, physically. This reactive way of living keeps us in motion, but out of control. It appears dynamic on the surface, but underneath, it is mechanical, unconscious, and draining. It is a life lived outward, not inward. When you live in reaction, you are not living from choice, you are living from habit. Someone says something unkind and you feel hurt. You see a post online and you feel envious. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel rage. The feeling arises before you even understand what is happening. The reaction comes before any reflection. There is no inner space, no pause, no conscious direction. Over time, this leads to a deep sense of disconnection from the self. You are moving through life, but you are not truly present in it. You are a character in a script written by the world around you. Reflection is what gives you back the authorship. It is what creates the space between the trigger and the response. It is not just thinking, it is seeing. It is observing what arises within you without immediately identifying with it. When something upsets you and you pause, breathe, and ask, why am I reacting this way? you have stepped into reflection. When you take the time to look inward before responding, you shift from unconscious reaction to conscious choice. This space is where wisdom begins. Without it, we stay locked in patterns. With it, we start to awaken. The problem is that modern life does not encourage reflection. It encourages speed. Everything is instant. Communication is instant. News is instant. Decisions are instant. We are told that success belongs to the fast, the responsive, the immediately available. But reflection takes time. It requires stillness. It asks you to slow down in a world that never stops moving. This is why it feels unnatural at first. Sitting with a difficult feeling rather than pushing it away takes strength. Pausing before responding to someone's anger takes awareness. Choosing not to reply to every message instantly requires boundaries. These are the small acts of reflection that slowly reshape your entire life. A life lived in reaction becomes a life of emotional turbulence. You are up and down depending on what happens to you. If things go well, you are happy. If things go poorly, you are miserable. You are at the mercy of your environment, your relationships, your news feed. There is no inner anchor, only outer stimulus. In contrast, a life built on reflection becomes stable. You do not deny emotions, but you meet them consciously. You allow yourself to feel, but you don't become consumed by the feeling. You observe the waves of experience, but you are not thrown around by every tide. This is not indifference, it is depth, it is not detachment, it is clarity. Living in reflection also means learning to listen inwardly more than outwardly. When you live in reaction, you are always looking to the world for direction. You to check what others are doing. You seek validation before making decisions. You doubt your own voice because it has grown faint from disuse. But reflection reawakens that voice. It brings you back to what you truly value, what you actually want, what genuinely matters to you. Without reflection, you may achieve success that leaves you feeling empty. You may follow a path that was never really yours. You may please everyone and yet feel deeply disconnected from yourself. It is through reflection that you begin to understand yourself, not in a surface level way, but deeply. You begin to notice your fears, your wounds, your unconscious patterns. You start to see how often your reactions are not even about the present moment. They are echoes from the past. A harsh word triggers an old insecurity. A rejection stirs a forgotten pain. A success awakens guilt. These insights do not come from constant doing. They come from stopping, observing, listening. They come from choosing to meet life not just with action, but with awareness. You avoid silence, so you avoid yourself in a world where everything demands your attention. Silence has become uncomfortable. Most people cannot sit in a quiet room without reaching for something: music, a phone, a screen, a distraction. The moment noise disappears, an unease begins to rise. That unease is not caused by the silence itself, but by what silence reveals. Silence is not empty. It is full of all the things you have avoided, repressed, or never taken the time to face. When you avoid silence, you are not avoiding boredom. You are avoiding yourself. Silence is a mirror. It reflects what is present inside you without distortion. In sound, movement, and distraction, it is easy to mask your true state. You can appear confident. You can stay busy. You can perform a version of yourself that feels safe and acceptable. But in silence, all of that fades. What remains is your raw inner world, your real thoughts, your buried feelings, your unmet needs. And for many, this is terrifying. They fear that what they find in silence will be too much, too heavy, too painful, too unclear. So they fill the space, they fill their calendar, they fill every moment with noise, not knowing that this avoidance is the very reason they feel disconnected and empty. Silence is uncomfortable because it removes the layers you've placed over your truth. When there is nothing to distract you, the questions you've buried begin to surface. Who am I really beneath all the roles I play? What do I actually feel when I'm not trying to impress, entertain, or achieve? What do I truly want from my life? These are questions that noise keeps away. Distraction may offer temporary relief, but it does not offer resolution. Only in silence do you meet the parts of yourself that have waited patiently to be seen. Only in silence can integration begin. There is a common misunderstanding that silence means the absence of something valuable. In reality, silence is the space where value can arise. It is the womb of insight, the ground of clarity. It is the environment in which you can listen, not just to external voices, but to your own. Most people live with a constant inner dialogue that is shaped by external inputs. They are reacting to opinions, demands, and expectations, but they rarely pause to question which of those voices actually belong to them. In silence, the false voices fall away. What remains is your own rhythm, your own breath, your own truth. Avoiding silence weakens your ability to face life. If you cannot sit quietly with yourself, how will you sit with others in their pain? If you are constantly escaping your own thoughts, how would you truly listen when someone else speaks? The strength to be present begins with the strength to be present with yourself. Silence is not just a practice, it is a training. It is where you build the capacity to hold space for yourself, for others, for life's complexity. It is you learn to remain grounded even when everything around you is in motion. The avoidance of silence often shows up as a restless need to do something. Even rest becomes performative. You are resting while watching videos, scrolling endlessly, or thinking about what comes next. You are physically still, but mentally you are sprinting. True silence is not just outer stillness, it is inner stillness. It is the quieting of that compulsion to always move, fix, or consume. It is a return to being. And in that return, something profound happens. You begin to feel again, not just the loud emotions like anger or excitement, but the quiet ones like gratitude, sorrow, contentment. These emotions only arise in a mind that is not constantly stirred. There is a wisdom that only emerges when you are silent long enough to hear it. It does not shout. It does not interrupt. It waits. And if you never pause, you will miss it. You will go through life guided not by insight, but by habit. You will keep repeating the same patterns, chasing the same goals, and wondering why they never satisfy. Silence is not a luxury. It is a necessity for any honest life. It is where the outer world fades enough for the inner world to speak. And in that speaking, you discover something you cannot find in noise yourself. You carry unresolved pain. There is a quiet weight that many people carry, a heaviness they often cannot name but feel every day. It shows up in the way they move through life, in their relationships, in their thoughts, in their moments of silence. It is the echo of something unhealed. When pain is not processed, it does not disappear. It settles into the background of your experience, shaping your choices, distorting your perceptions, and creating a sense of emptiness that no external achievement or distraction can erase. You carry unresolved pain not because you are weak, but because at some point you were overwhelmed and did not know how to face it. Pain takes many forms. It can come from childhood experiences, neglect, rejection, feeling unseen or unloved. It can come from betrayal, failure, loss, or humiliation. Often it begins at a time when you were too young or unequipped to deal with it fully, so the only available response was to suppress it, bury it, move on. And this response becomes habitual. You learn not to cry, not to ask for help, not to feel too deeply. You learn to appear strong, composed, independent. But the pain remains. It becomes part of your nervous system, part of your beliefs, part of the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. The danger of unresolved pain is not just that it hurts, but that it hides. You forget where it started, but you feel its presence everywhere. It colors your relationships. You may become overly sensitive to rejection, not because someone has truly hurt you, but because that wound already existed and they simply touched it. You may sabotage intimacy, not because you don't want to be close, but because closeness reminds you of the vulnerability that once caused you pain. You may become addicted to control or perfection, not because these things bring joy, but because they create a fragile barrier between you and the feelings you've tried to escape. Unresolved pain also feeds internal narratives. You start to believe things like, I am not enough. People will always leave. If I show weakness, I'll be hurt. Or I have to earn love. These beliefs are not born from truth, they are born from pain. And yet they guide your behavior. They become the lens through which you see the world. You are no longer responding to the present moment, but to old memories that live in your body like ghosts. Until these memories are acknowledged, they continue to shape your life from the shadows. Healing begins with recognition. It begins when you stop running from the discomfort and turn to face it. This does not mean reliving your suffering, but witnessing it with new awareness. It means feeling the emotions you once pushed away: grief, fear, anger, loneliness, not to drown in them, but to finally let them move through you. Emotions are not meant to be held indefinitely. They are meant to rise, be felt, and be released. But when you block that process, they stagnate. The energy of unprocessed emotion remains trapped. And that trapped energy is what so often feels like emptiness. You may think you feel nothing, but that numbness is not the absence of feeling. It is the result of too much feeling held for too long. You go numb not because you lack emotion, but because your system can no longer carry the weight of it all. The mind shuts down sensation as a form of protection. But over time, that protection becomes a cage. To feel alive again, to feel present and whole, you must gently begin to feel again, not all at once, not with force, but with patience and compassion. This process of meeting your pain is not linear. Some days you will feel strong. Other days you will feel raw and exposed. But each time you face what you've avoided, you take back a piece of yourself. Each time you allow yourself to cry, to rage, to grieve, you make space for peace to enter. This is the paradox. The more you resist pain, the more it controls you. The more you welcome it, the more it releases you. Your unresolved pain does not need to define your life. It is not your identity. It is a part of your story, but it is not the end of it. Only through presence and honesty can you begin to transform that pain into wisdom, into softness, into strength that is no longer built on suppression, but on truth. You lack inner structure. A house without a foundation may look complete from the outside, but it cannot endure storms. The same is true of a life without inner structure. You may appear functional, successful, even content. But without something solid within you, the smallest challenge shakes your sense of stability. The emptiness many people feel is not because they lack opportunity, love, or experience. It is because they lack inner order. Inner structure is not about rigid routines or forced discipline. It is about having a grounded inner system that holds you steady, gives direction to your thoughts, and aligns your actions with deeper values. When you lack inner structure, you are constantly pulled in different directions. Your energy is scattered. You wake up unsure of your purpose. You move through your day reactive instead of intentional, and your decisions are guided more by mood than by clarity. You may tell yourself that you're going with the flow, but there is a difference between being fluid and being lost. Flow is grounded in awareness and responsiveness. Being lost is the absence of anchor. Inner structure is what transforms freedom into meaningful movement instead of chaotic drift. Most people build their lives around outer structure: jobs, schedules, relationships, achievements. These external frames give a sense of order, but they are temporary. A job can be lost, relationships can change, routines can be interrupted. When your entire sense of balance depends on something outside of you, your inner world remains fragile. Inner structure means that even when outer things collapse, there is something stable inside that holds you together. It is a personal rhythm that does not depend on circumstance. It is the ability to return to yourself, to reset, to recenter, regardless of what is happening around you. This structure comes from consistent practices, but more than that, it comes from clarity. You need to know what you stand for, what your values are, what your priorities are when everything else becomes loud. Without this clarity, life becomes a series of reactions, always shifting according to the latest demand. You may feel busy, but you are not rooted. You are active, but not purposeful. This disconnection from inner orientation creates exhaustion. You are constantly moving but going nowhere. Inner structure creates direction. It allows you to filter what matters from what doesn't. It creates space for focus and reduces the noise that comes from trying to be everything at once. Inner structure is also the foundation for emotional regulation. Without it, you are at the mercy of your feelings. You get swept up by anxiety, anger, despair, or distraction, and you don't know how to return to calm. When you have inner structure, you have tools. You know how to breathe through discomfort. You know how to pause before reacting. You know how to observe your inner state without being controlled by it. This is not something that happens overnight. It is something built slowly through attention, practice, and reflection. There is a kind of peace that comes not from having a perfect life, but from knowing how to meet life as it comes. That peace is a direct result of structure. It is knowing what you will do when you feel lost, how you will respond when triggered, what rituals bring you back to yourself. It is understanding your own mind well enough to not believe every thought it produces. It is knowing the difference between a passing mood and a true calling. This inner order gives you freedom, not restriction. It frees you from being tossed around by impulse and helps you make decisions from wisdom rather than urgency. People often seek external control when they lack internal order. They become obsessed with organizing, planning, perfecting, but no amount of outer control can compensate for inner chaos. True structure is gentle, it does not force, it supports, it helps you carry yourself through uncertainty. It offers a spine to your softness. It does not mean you never break down, but that even in your breakdown, there is a part of you that watches, that understands, that remains still. That is the structure you need, not a cage, but a container, not rules, but rhythm, not pressure, but presence. You seek answers outside when they lie within. From an early age. Most people are conditioned to look outward for answers. They are taught that wisdom comes from authorities, that success is measured by external achievements, and that happiness is something to be found in circumstances, possessions, or approval. This belief becomes a lens through which life is viewed, that fulfillment exists somewhere outside, waiting to be reached, bought, won, or discovered. As a result, people spend years chasing what they already carry inside. They search for clarity in books, in mentors, in relationships, in experiences. And while these sources can offer guidance or reflection, none of them can give you what only your own awareness can reveal. The tendency to look outward is not wrong. It is natural to seek understanding from others, to learn from those who walked before you, to receive support. But it becomes a problem when this seeking turns into dependency. When you begin to believe that someone else knows better than your own inner truth, you slowly silence the voice within you. Over time, this voice becomes faint. You start to mistrust your instincts, question your desires, doubt your inner knowing. In doing so, you disconnect from the very source of wisdom that has always been available to you. Your own direct experience, your own silence, your own heart. The inner world is quiet. It does not scream for your attention like advertisements, headlines, or social media. It does not demand anything from you. That is why so many overlook it. The world outside is louder, more stimulating, more immediate. It offers quick answers, instant validation, and endless distraction. But the answers found there are often generic. They do not fit the unique texture of your life, your pain, your calling. True understanding comes not from copying someone else's path, but from walking your own with full presence. No book, teacher, or system can replace your inner alignment. They can point, but only you can walk. There is a moment in life, often after repeated disappointment or disillusionment, when you begin to realize that the next thing will not save you. The next success, the next relationship, the next transformation, you begin to feel the weight of chasing answers in places that only lead you further from yourself. It is then that a subtle shift can occur. Instead of running outward, you turn inward. You begin to sit with questions instead of rushing to solve them. You begin to listen not for noise, but for silence. In that space, you rediscover your ability to feel what is true even before you can explain it. Seeking answers within does not mean ignoring the world. It means meeting it from a place of integrity. It means that before you ask someone else what you should do, you first ask yourself what you truly want. Before you try to fix a problem outside, you examine the state of your own mind. You stop treating life as something that happens to you and start seeing yourself as an active participant, one whose thoughts, actions, and choices carry power. This inner awareness brings responsibility, but it also brings freedom. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, but a co-creator of experience. Most people underestimate the clarity they already possess. They think they need more information when what they really need is stillness. They think they need more advice when what they really need is self-trust. The inner voice is often subtle, especially if it has been ignored for years, but it does not go away. It waits for you to get quiet enough to hear it again. It is there when you are honest with yourself. It is there when you stop trying to impress or conform. It is there in your body, in your breath, in your discomfort, in your longing. It does not speak in perfect sentences. Sometimes it speaks through sensation, through dreams, through a deep sense of yes or no that has no logic, but is unmistakable. To return to this voice, you must stop outsourcing your authority. You must stop assuming that others know better simply because they speak louder or with more certainty. You must learn to sit with not knowing, to hold questions open without rushing to fill them with noise. In this way, you become your own guide. Others may walk beside you, but you no longer need them to walk ahead of you. You can take advice without abandoning your truth. You can listen deeply without giving your power away. You can receive but not depend. And in this balance, you come home to yourself